You there, Dr. Peat?
Yes, hi.
Okay, excellent. So, once again, for those people who perhaps have never heard of you, or heard you speak, or heard of your areas of expertise, would you outline your academic and professional background before we get started on tonight's show?
Relative to nerve biology, that was my intended major when I went to the University of Oregon as a graduate student in 1968, because I had been interested in linguistics and psychology. But as soon as I got there, 2 or 3 months, I had decided to switch to aging and reproductive physiology because of the great dogmatism in the nerve biology field. And so I spent the 4 years working on reproductive aging, and female reproductive aging in particular. So I concentrated on the effects of estrogen, progesterone, thyroid, oxygen, and antioxidants on the age-related changes in metabolism.
Okay, great. And I know for probably the last 35 years, is it, or is it more, you've been doing your own research, and you have been in private consulting capacity previously.
I guess must be
you're there?
40 years, I think.
Sorry, 40 years, okay. Okay, good. Well, I know I've managed to speak to quite a few people over the years who've either come into contact with you or have been given good advice by you and have certainly making very good improvements in their health. So it's always good to be justified by people who are corroborating what you have told them and where they were when they met you and where they subsequently were afterwards. So it's always very heartening. I know a lot of what you've spoken about in the past has been fairly controversial. I know for me, when we first got introduced to you, I think in 2007 or 8, a lot of what you said was very controversial. And in my education in herbal medicine, again, the same dogmatic, what I now know is the same dogmatic and erroneous ideas in science were still perpetrated, and a lot of what you've been uncovering in the last 6 years or so has certainly got me thinking differently. Although it's very difficult to unlearn. I know it's a little bit like the constant suggestion that sugar's bad for you. The general public seem to just have it as part of their fact that sugar is bad for you, the same with salt. So I know the last couple of shows we've been talking about diabetes in particular, and I know that your most recent newsletter was relating to nerve damage, how to protect and nourish nerves and restore them. So I think I wanted to start by saying that the classical description of diabetes was, or is, a wasting disease where the excess glucose is lost in the urine as a byproduct of protein metabolism, and the patient simply wastes away, deprived of the needed energy production to sustain the cellular functions, resulting in death. And obesity is now a universal disease recognized even here in the States, and obese diabetics are commonly presenting. So rather than the classic description of diabetes, medicine now erroneously classes diabetes as insulin resistance as well as insulin dependence, which is quite rare, but the truth is quite different mechanistically and, more importantly, from a treatment perspective. Would you explain the processes that you understand diabetes to stem from and outline your approach to its management?
My father happened to be an example of the traditional, original type of diabetes. He wasted away to, I think it was under 100 pounds, and it was just a few years after insulin had come into medical use, and he didn't want to become dependent on it. So he and my mother looked through the old naturopathic medical literature and found that brewer's yeast had sometimes cured people, and so that he went on a brewer's yeast diet for several weeks and recovered his weight and lived the rest of his life with no sign of diabetes.
Do you know how much brewer's yeast he was using?
that was his only food, basically, for several weeks.
Wow. Now, just refresh my memory. I know the B vitamins are the important part of brewer's yeast, but specifically?
And there are steroids in it, and potassium, a lot of potassium, and phosphate, which is not for general health. You can very easily get phosphate poisoning, but probably it's one of the factors that could be involved in that effect, maybe by having something to do with interfering with stress hormones.
Okay, so your father recovered from a 100 pounds wasting away using brewer's yeast as a fairly sole dietary constituent.
Yeah, and the cause, I think there are probably many causes of the traditional wasting form of diabetes, but a virus is one of the plausible theories that can cause inflammation and killing off temporarily of the insulin-producing cells. But just very intense stress. There were experiments in which if part of the dog's pancreas was removed, so it had just a smaller reserve of insulin-producing cells, then a single injection of a large dose of cortisol was enough to make the dog permanently diabetic.
Wow. So that extreme stress caused by cortisol itself as an inflammatory mediator.
Yeah, and then once the tissues are unable to get glucose just from that one episode of stress-induced lack of insulin, the cells are basically dying because they can't get the glucose they need, so they call on fatty acids from stores, and the fatty acid in turn kills the remaining or regenerating insulin-producing cells. So it starts a vicious circle.